Yeah, I did change, and I'm really glad I changed.
This one's wife. Narc mum versus Narc daughter. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. As I have explained to you previously, it's clear how this one's wife became a narcissist. First of all, she had the genetic predisposition passed down from both her mother and her father, and she was subjected to a lack of control environment in her childhood by virtue of an absent mother and that her father overcompensated, treating her like a princess. If you want to understand more about how a narcissist is created, I direct you to watch my video, What is Narcissism? It's highly educational and very useful for you. Thus, we have two narcissists. We have Doria Ragland. Her daughter, this one's wife, is a non-intimate secondary source in her fuel matrix. This means she subjects her to the shelf dynamic, occasionally taking her off the shelf, interacting with her, perhaps through a telephone call, being together in person, and then she goes back on the shelf. Like any narcissist, Doria needs to control her daughter, extract fuel from her, and possibly utilize her for character traits and residual benefits. With regard to this one's wife, her mother is also a non-intimate secondary source, but in her fuel matrix. Similar to her mother, she utilizes her mother for the purposes of the drawing of fuel, character traits, and residual benefits, and she must be controlled. Thus, you have two narcissists that are both non-intimate secondary sources in one another's fuel matrices, that they both subject one another to the shelf dynamic, taking one another off the shelf and interacting intermittently with them. This one's wife tends to use her mother as part of her facade management. Look, I have good relationship with my mother, and also she's a black woman, so I can't be racist with regard to Dr. Sophie Chandoka because, hey, look, my mum's black. Doria Ragland doesn't tend to use her daughter so much with regard to any potential facade that she might utilize. Much rather, she has to control her daughter. She receives fuel from her. She benefits by way of character trait acquisition because of the fame and title of her daughter, and also there's a residual benefit as a consequence of the financial association between the two. But we now have an interesting example of when two familial narcissists interact in a snippet of video which, unsurprisingly, this one's wife posted to her Instagram account once again. Yes, this one's wife utilizing social media like so many narcissists do to pursue the prime aims. Let's have a look at the video and then what it tells us about the interaction between these two narcissists.
The passion fruit goes up.
It's good without too.
It's really good without. Because once you get to the bottom, it tastes all the banana. Is that a look of joy? I was like, and
I'm muted.
dun dun dun. My mom has nothing
I'll
to
tell you when
say.
I'm done.
The video commences in this one's wife's kitchen with a huge array of copper pans and pots hanging above the island in the kitchen, which clearly would require a lot of dusting. I can't imagine that this one's wife does that. That'll be down to a minion. I have to say it's not the most attractive kitchen, but we're not here to appraise the interior design of the property. And we see this one's wife, Richter's grin plastered on face as we see her engaging in what she does best, sprinkling stuff. We don't see her actually making. There's a couple of bowls to suggest that somebody's made it. And she's there doing what she invariably does, arranging things and elevating it with some mint. Doria has been invited, although she doesn't look particularly happy when we first see her, as she's stood arms folded back to her daughter. We get an overhead shot of this one's wife elevating with the mint, and then it's time to try it. And Doria takes a mouthful and looks to the left, There's somebody else in the room. We don't know who it is. They are not identified. There's some comment about it being really good without from the third party, which causes Doria to look over at that individual to acknowledge them as she's tasting it. She looks suitably underwhelmed. And then this one's wife tells us about the fact of you getting to the bottom, and there's the banana. Brilliant insights. Now, you'll notice that this one's wife, as she's looking at her mother as this is said, her mother continues to look suitably unimpressed, and you can see that this one's wife is hanging on her reaction. This is because she needs to control her mother, and her mother's reaction will signify whether she's under control or not. This translates into the mind of this one's wife as, I'm desperate for her approval. Even for a narcissist such as this one's wife, who believes that she is above everybody, when it comes to her mother, it is the case that she requires her approval. This is what's going through her mind. Subconsciously, it's about the necessity of the control. And this one's wife glances down at the concoction that has been made as she waits for Doria to say something. There's no response from Doria. This continues on a moment-by-moment basis to threaten the need that this one's wife has to control her, and therefore her narcissism motivates her to intervene, and she asks, was that a look of joy? Ugh. Cringe-worthy comment, as you'd expect from this one's wife. And she looks around at there's at least two other people in the room, because she looks across to her left and issues a stupid laugh. There's a little bit of a smile that comes from Doria, but she continues to press her to provide a response to what she thinks about this concoction. You may have noticed that this one's wife then dips her own spoon into the food of her mother's, which is somewhat unhygienic and shows her absence of boundary recognition, and takes a mouthful herself. And then what do we have? Doria's response. I'll tell you when I'm done. So what you have here is two narcissists that are jockeying for position vis-a-vis the necessity of control. It may well be that this is the 6th or 7th time that there has been a take in relation to this, and Doria objects to being used as a prop. This one's wife uses her as a prop in the context of the film, but also in her life, because that's what narcissists do. Accordingly, she might be not only fed up at the fact that this is the 6th or 7th take that they've had to do, and she's sick of tasting the food, and therefore isn't going to hide her reaction, or even if it's a first take, her narcissism causes her to, in effect, object to being used in the way that this one's wife is using her, which is, you're here to taste on my behalf, you're here to appear in my video, you're here to do what I want. All of that offends Doria's need for control. Accordingly, what does her narcissism do? Rather than invite her to play along and smile and beam and go, oh, it's delicious, fantastic, you've done so well, in the way that other appliances were brought into the show with Love Meghan to do, here it's a different situation. Doria Ragland's narcissism requires her to nullify the threat to control posed by, in effect, her daughter's pestering. And therefore, she says nothing. She provides no reaction. This then causes this one's wife to need to nullify the threat to control posed by her non-reaction, which means she asks her, is that a look of joy? Because there's no immediate confirmation, this one's wife has to immediately move to the indirect assertion of control. So she sought to assert control over her mother by inviting her to taste the product. She doesn't get the response, which threatens her control. Her narcissism makes her assert control directly again by asking, is that a look of joy? She doesn't get this sort of response, and therefore her narcissism in the blink of an eye basically says, the direct assertion of control is not working, move to the secondary assertion of control, indirect, namely, give a laugh and look at the other people in the room to invite their response. So she does. And Doria does say something, but it's hard to tell what she says. And because she witnesses her daughter trying to involve other people in the interaction, that's a further threat to Doria Ragland's need for control. And she responds with the, "I'll tell you when I'm done." Namely, you're not controlling me, I'll control you by telling you when I have finished eating this. It's a fantastic little clip that shows the jostling that can go on between two narcissists. Here, two familial narcissists. There's no shouting, there's no screaming, there's no shoving, there's no fighting. But believe me, like any interaction that would accord between a narcissist and someone else, when it's a narcissist and narcissist, they're both vying for control. And here, this one's wife isn't getting it because her mother doesn't want to hand it over because she needs control herself. So you get this lack of response, this lack of enthusiasm from Doria Ragland, the prodding and the pressing from this one's wife, and then ultimately the slap down from Doria Ragland of, "I'll tell you when I'm done." This one's wife, of course, puts this out to show, "Oh, look, here's a fun interaction with my mother as she tastes my latest concoction. Look, everybody, aren't I wonderful? I'm here with my mum. She's a black lady, so I'm not racist. And look, here I am in the kitchen. Go and buy my spread." But what this actually provides us is an excellent example of two narcissists clashing. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for watching.